Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media with myself, Salalo Makwidira, standing in for Inayat Wadi, who's busy crisscrossing the whole of South Africa, going to different towns and, within different provinces with the ongoing Hamza Shalan tour, which later tonight will be out in Emiratia, where Hamza will be engaging with content creators. He'll be engaging with influencers, young people, students, people that are passionate about content creation and activism, using social media as a platform to raise consciousness and to raise awareness on what's currently happening in Palestine. So if you're out in Malaysia and you want to be a part of it, you can go to our various social media pages and you can get all the details there. Hamza Shalan is a Palestinian journalist and filmmaker who has come down, who Salam Media has brought down to South Africa to kind of engage with South Africans and to spread that message of activism. So it's going to be an interesting one out in Emiratia this evening. And coming back to the show, we're going to be focusing on a groundbreaking development in international law. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and also Hamas military commander Mohammed Dief, alleging war crimes and crimes against humanity during this ongoing siege and genocide against the people of Gaza. This decision has sparked both hope and skepticism. Some see it as a long overdue step towards justice for the victims in Gaza. Well, I can tell you for sure that that's exactly what we think here on Salam Media. While others question its enforceability and the global political will to hold these leaders accountable. And to help us unpack the legal and moral implications of what I think is a very, very monumental ruling, we're joined by human rights attorney Ziyaad Ebrahim Patel with his expertise in international law and human rights advocacy. Will share light on the potential impact of this very, very monumental ICC decision. Ziyaad, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really, really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to your viewers and listeners. I've just been listening to your introduction, and I must say that indeed this is a monumental moment within the international law structure, especially when it comes to war criminals like Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant to be held accountable for crimes that are being committed on a continuous basis with impunity in occupied Palestine as well as in Lebanon and in Gaza. But also, before I start unpacking this important and crucial decision that was made by the trial chamber of the International Criminal Court, we have to understand that there has been a characteristic structure and architecture of Israel's war on Gaza. This is important because just a few days ago, a UN Special Committee report came out which was extremely damaging and damning to the Israelis, whereby it was found that Israel's architecture was consistent with warfare methods to be implemented, whereby genocide is being perpetrated. And this report is extremely damaging. One of the characteristics of the report speaks about starvation being used as a weapon and tool of war. We've also seen Israel use the weaponization of health, where hospitals have been attacked, medical rescue workers, first responders have been attacked in the initial part of the war, and continuing that we've seen how babies in incubators needed to be relocated because there was no water, no fuel, no electricity, and no energy supply for those incubators to actually function properly. So what do we look at? I mean, we look at 13 months of war or more in the Gaza Strip. Over the account is about 44,000 Palestinians have been killed, hundreds of thousands have been injured and maimed, thousands of children have been maimed for life, or where they become limbless, they've lost one or two limbs. We've seen famine and starvation. South Africa has brought numerous applications to the International Court of Justice seeking intermediate relief and provisional emergency relief in Gaza. whereby humanitarian aid is not going in at the scale that is required. And Israel has actually orchestrated the famine that is now happening in the northern Gaza Strip. So the situation is catastrophic. It is a Holocaust. And also, if you look at the number of times that the United States at the United Nations Security Council have vetoed many attempts by state parties to ask for an immediate ceasefire, for the allowance of humanitarian aid to go through. And only humanitarian aid is able to go through, and you can deal with starvation if the facts on the ground provide for that kind of situation where healthcare workers, aid workers feel safe, and logistics are able to be implemented on the ground to deliver the humanitarian aid at scale. So coming on the back of that and noting that South Africa had also brought and referred Israel to the International Criminal Court last year, November or December, this is monumental, both on an international level and at a domestic level. On the international level, the fact that the ICC has rejected Israel's claims and refuted Israel's arguments, Israel was allowed and had local standards in terms of Articles 18 and 19 of the Rome Statute, even though it is not a party to the Rome Statute, but because certain crimes were being committed within its territorial jurisdiction, it was allowed to make representations. It was invited, and Israel made those representations, which were refuted. One of the issues went back to whether Palestine was considered a state party for the International Criminal Court, and whether the International Criminal Court could exercise jurisdiction. This was a decision that was found already long before, that the International Criminal Court will have jurisdiction and is able to implement jurisdiction for crimes in the occupied Palestinian territories, including the West Bank and Gaza, dating back to the 2014 war. So that on that basis, Israel had already failed, and that the International Criminal Court had already initiated an investigation into alleged war crimes, genocide, persecution, crimes against humanity, which include acts of starvation, as well as the crime of apartheid, where we know that there's an institutionalized and racist implementation of laws that is ongoing in the West Bank. But I also want to speak about something that has happened very recent in South Africa. We've recently extended on the genocide complaints. You must be aware of this.
Yes.
There is an executive summary, a comprehensive executive summary that is now circulating both locally and internationally, where the complainant represents the investor, the Media Review Network, and the Palestine Solidarity Campaign of Cape Town had brought this criminal complaint. Is in fact a continuation of the South African Zionist Terrorism Corridor Probe that was brought in February 2022. We then extended the complaint into genocide and lodged an extensive request for investigation on the 9th of July this year. And we've extended it further into more information that we've got on the Jewish National Fund, who we say is a terrorist organization and network, and found in Canada to actually be financing Israeli military infrastructure. Added to that were two names: Aaron Bayhat, who's a South African who has been found to serve in what you would call the elite IDF sniper ghost unit. This unit, there's an individual in Bayhat's unit called Daniel Raab, who is a self-confessed killer, who has said that this unit has had certain directives of killing Palestinians of military age, killing Palestinians that don't know that the IDF unit is operating in the area, has been found very close to the Al-Nahar hospital and in other Palestinian neighborhoods where there's been incidents of civilian killing. There was a girl, a young girl, 16 years old, adult male civilians that are being just sniped off, and this is indiscriminate, constituting war crimes. We've made a substantial complaint based on Yunus Tarawi's interview of the Ghost Unit, and also on the back of the Al Jazeera documentary looking into war crimes into the Gaza Strip. And this has been lodged with our local authorities, with both the Hawks and the National Prosecuting Authority. So this is extremely, extremely important on the back of this development, and the fact that the ICC has now issued arrest warrants against Gallant and Netanyahu, the two architects of the genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, and the fact that we've also cited them and other international international accused suspects in our domestic complaints, including in the Israeli Knesset, other members of the Smotrich and others, that we would be asking our authorities to also be implementing and enforcing those arrest warrants that are issued by the International Criminal Court on the basis that South Africa has made the referral, that we've got a formal complaint against these individuals here in South Africa, that there must be a red alert, there must be warrants of arrest, and all must be informed, as well as border control, because we want to end this culture of impunity.
No, definitely. Ziyaad, I want us to take a quick break, but then when we come back, I want to touch a bit on these warrant of arrests, particularly focusing on enforcement and also just the general global politics and where, or what this means ultimately for the rest of the world to have Benjamin Netanyahu on a wanted list. But we'll chat about it after the short break.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
After the recent attacks on Gaza, many families have been displaced with their homes left destroyed. Through your donations, our teams are on the ground in Gaza, providing support and delivering necessary aid to families affected. The people of Gaza need your help. Give hope. Donate today to Penny Appeal South Africa. www.pennyappeal.org.za 031 1100 573.
We are here on the ground with Penny Appeal organizations in Gaza.
Africa. Education, health, dignity, empowerment. These wishes all begin with water. Africa Muslims Agency is committed to providing clean water to the thousands who still live without this basic human right. Support us in giving the best of charities. Provide a water well for 16,500 Rand or a borehole for 55,000 Rand in Afghanistan or 65,000 Rand in Africa. Gain Thawabi Jariyah and help communities to reach their full potential. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Connect and stay ahead with Salam Media. This is Salam Media, coming to you live from South Africa.
Welcome back. The time is 28 minutes past 8, and I'm still talking to human rights attorney Ziyaad Ebrahim Patel, and we are still dissecting this very, very monumental case, the ICC issuing a warrant of arrest for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and also the Israeli Minister of Defense, and I think this is very, very monumental, and the fact that us as South Africans, the people that are so passionately aligned to Palestine, need to know a bit more about this and understand the implications of it, so that when you go out there in the streets to protest, or when we make a case for Palestine, we have all the facts. That's why we have attorney Ziyaad Ebrahim Patel here. Ziyaad, thank you so much for staying with us. Before we went on the break, I wanted to touch a bit on, enforcement and, global politics. Given the fact that Israel is not a member of the ICC and has already rejected its jurisdiction, what are the practical steps of enforcing these warrants? And can we expect any cooperation from other nations who are part and parcel of the ICC?
Yes, this is a good question, and I think this is the hypocrisy that we witness on an international level when it comes to the accountability of certain leaders, actors, and agents of Western so-called states that become protected by other countries because of aligned policies and aligned security relationships. And of course, we see this with the United States and Israel. We see this with European countries and Israel, where for a long time, the United States still continues to supply mass weapons and weaponization of the IDF. A huge amount of military aid goes to Israel. Large volumes of military weapons get licensed between European countries and Israel. So this level of accountability becomes an issue when it relates to the ICC. Prior to the issuing of these arrest warrants, there was interference with the discretion, and it was being hampered and impeded. And I think even the state prosecutor made certain comments about this, that there were certain lobbies and forces that were trying to hinder the work of the investigating arm of the ICC into the actual arrest warrants that have now culminated and issued by the International Criminal Court. But before I address that, I just want to deal very pertinently with what the court or the chamber said. It said that it found the conduct of Netanyahu and Gallant, which concerned the activities of the Israeli government and bodies of the armed forces, civilian population in Palestine, more specifically civilians in Gaza. It found that with regard to war crimes, the chamber found it appropriate to issue arrest warrants pursuant to the law of international armed conflict. The chamber also found that alleged crimes against humanity were part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Gaza. And this is important. The chamber considered that there are reasonable grounds to believe that both individuals intentionally and knowingly deprive the civilian population in Gaza of objects indispensable to their survival, including food, water, and medicine and medical supplies, as well as fuel and electricity from at least 8 October 2023 to 20th May 2024. It's quite a detailed statement that was released by the International Criminal Court Media Relations Office. And I would suggest people to go and look at the statement and be informed about the underlying reasons behind the arrest warrant. If we look at the situation of Russia and Ukraine, and we see this hypocrisy, where European countries have been persisting and insisting that the ICC must act in that instance when it comes to Russia, but is protecting Netanyahu. I've just seen on Al Jazeera now statements coming out from the White House. Netanyahu still speaking very emboldened about these arrest warrants not meaning anything, and that this is an attack on it's anti-Semitic and so forth. But what else has the Zionists got to conceal their crimes? So they continuously talk about anti-Semitism, Hamas being the terrorists, while they continue with their acts of violence and terror and genocide and war crimes. So how does this affect us as a country in South Africa? I've mentioned earlier that we've lodged an extensive criminal complaint. South Africa is a party to the Rome Statute, and in principles of complementarity, South Africa on an international level has made a formal referral to the ICC, which would now emanate in South Africa having to enforce the ICC's orders of arrest warrants against Yoav Gallant, Netanyahu, and I believe many others in the Israeli Knesset that are complicit in this genocide and war crimes that is ongoing. This is spoken to in our executive summary, as well as in the extension of the war crimes complaint, where we've expanded into genocide, as well as complicit institutions that are facilitating the recruitment of lone soldiers and mercenaries who say they're going to make aliyah, especially lone soldiers, but go and perpetrate these crimes and then come back to South Africa and enjoy our tourism destinations and come to enjoy our constitutional democracy. We've seen that in the instance of Uri Sheikh Haddad, who is one of the few suspects in our complaint, found and identified to be one of the IDF units in Gaza, and just recently located in the city of Cape Town in our tourism destinations, enjoying and having a vacation and holiday. And we've said that this is completely unacceptable. So what can South Africa and other countries do? Coming back to your question, if you are a state party and you have signed and domesticated the Rome Statute, you are obliged that if Netanyahu and others enter your territory, that they be immediately arrested and extradited to the International Criminal Court for investigation and prosecution. If you've domesticated the Rome Statute, or your country aligned with universal jurisdiction and strong customary universal jurisdictional norms, you are still obliged to arrest Netanyahu and either convene a trial within your own country and territory and jurisdiction. But our criminals that have committed crimes against humanity, in Latin it's called hostis humanus generis, those that have committed the most crimes against humanity, hostile to humanity, and they have to be brought to account.
No, definitely makes sense. And just in closing, because unfortunately we have run out of time, there's been an inclusion of a warrant of arrest for Hamas military commander, also Mohammed Diaf. How does this inclusion of both Israeli and Hamas leaders affect the perception of this ruling?
Well, we've made a very important submission to the National Prosecuting Authority and to the Directors of Priority Crimes Investigation on this issue of Hamas. Now, the narrative of Hamas that has come out of the Israeli regime has been that the operation on the 7th was an act of terror, and it had all the indicators of a terror, random, violent attack on the Israeli people, on Israeli soil, and that Israel has the right to defend itself. There's a huge question in international law about whether an occupying force like Israel even has the right to defend itself when it is occupying the land of another population or group. So even the right to defend itself is a very questionable issue. The second point in relation to that is any society, any population that has been oppressed, like in South Africa, when we were enduring the crimes against humanity of apartheid, we had prisoners that were being taken, were detained, that were being tortured. We're seeing this on a continuous basis in the West Bank, a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law and the Geneva Conventions when Palestinians are taken out of the occupied territories and taken into Israel and served their sentences or are being detained in Israeli prison cells. And most times their youth are being detained with forced confession. Parents don't even know where the children are. There are so many stories of Palestinians being tortured, which is a crime against humanity, by Israeli prison services. Now, when you look at the context of October 7th and its operation, our submissions are very clear that Hamas and the resistance movement had every right and act of resistance fight against this oppression in the aspirations for the right of self-determination and the right of return of Palestinians to their homes and land. And it has to be looked at in that context, that these are acts of resistance and not acts of terror. The acts of terrorism are actually acts of random violence that are committed indiscriminately, and then you don't even make any, in a war kind of situation or armed conflict situation, you don't make distinction between armed combatants and civilians, which then goes into war crimes. But these acts of violence that we're seeing in Gaza is nothing less than terrorism, and that's why we've invoked the protection of constitutional democracy against terrorism related against terrorism, against Zionists, as well as institutions that are funding this and facilitating this kind of recruitment into the IDF. So I believe that the ICC is acting on this because there's pressure from the West. We've seen that most of the evidence was debunked, or the information was circulating about Hamas fighters committing the worst kind of atrocities against civilians, or including rape and killing of babies. These have all been debunked. I've been many times to the Middle East. I also had the opportunity of engaging with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon during the First War, seeing how they operated. They are very spiritual, extremely spiritual. The fighters are extremely spiritual, very linked to their own chefs that guide them. They are very determined in their resolve for the liberation of Palestine. When I visited southern Lebanon, we were exposed to these where the fighters would fight against the Israeli outposts. They were all very spiritually linked to spiritual leaders and made very intentional decisions for martyrdom, which is the ultimate, prize. So why would they want to be sacrificing the martyrdom if that is the prize for liberation, freedom, to be committing these kinds of atrocities? And that is complete lies, and it's a fabrication, and it is a Hasbara narrative in order to do what they are doing in committing the crimes in Gaza. But very important, the point that I want to make is, why were the hostages taken? And that could be looked at either in isolation or in context. And those that are in international law, those that have been advocating for a free Palestine, have been saying that since the Nakba in 1948, Palestinians have been enduring this incremental genocide, this forced displacement, ethnic cleansing, war after war in Gaza from 2008 to currently, and the ill treatment of Palestinian prisoners. I made submissions in 2016 at the UN Human Rights Council about the treatment, detention, and ill treatment of Palestinian prisoners, and torture and so forth. So this was the idea of the hostages, was for a prisoner exchange. While are prisoners in the occupied Palestinian territories and in the West Bank that are just taken and detained without trial, with forced confessions, parents and family don't know where their children are. Why are those not considered as hostages for any given reason? Why doesn't the West talk about them being hostages when you are just taken with no due process whatsoever, extrajudicially, and for months on end, these children, these youth, Palestinian youth, are not located, not found. Parents are emotional. Imagine you don't see a child come home and you don't know where your child has been, and taken by the occupation forces. So the intent behind the October 7 operation was certainly to have a prisoner swap exchange for the hostages. But this was an intentional and reckless act by the Israelis, fully prosecuted by the United States in terms of the war and military aid that is being provided, as well as by European countries, in the genocide and the Holocaust that has unfolded. I wrote an article just after October 7th. It's something that could be accessed about the unfolding Holocaust in Gaza. And that was already identified in October. I think the article came out around the 20th of October, where we already saw all the blueprints of a genocide that is going to be happening. Remember, this was preceded by in the occupied Palestinian territories, in neighborhoods, Palestinian neighborhoods, where Smotrich and others were supporting pogroms and the forced displacement of Palestinians from their homes. So this is an ultra-nefarious, ethnocratic regime that is lawless, inhumane, ignorant, and ignominious to international law, and is going to do whatever it wants in fulfilling its own objectives, and they need to be stopped.
I think we're going to leave it on that note. Ziyaad, thank you so much for giving us your time and unpacking this very, very important and monumental step in Palestinian advocacy. Quite intricate, and I think as the story develops and we see just how the European countries react to this, we'll definitely be keeping in touch with you. But we're going to leave it here for now. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, jazakallah khair.
Well, there you have it. That was a human rights lawyer, human rights attorney, Ziyaad Ebrahim Patel, just unpacking the ICC issuing arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. You can send us your comments and what you think of this. There are some parts and some, groupings and people all across the world that think maybe this might be a symbolic move instead of a practical one. And I think we're yet to see if this decision by the ICC has the potential to bring tangible justice to the people of Palestine, or is it more of a statement against impunity? So you can follow us on our various social media pages. You can send us a WhatsApp. Our number is 0617660355. You can send us a voice note that will play on air, or you can give us a call on 011-680-0355 and tell us what do you think and what do you make of this. Chuck Yeager on YouTube, we see your comment. Thank you so much for interacting with us, and to everyone else, please send through your comments and let's keep the conversation going. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, News and Views continues after this.
We are here in the middle of a Zahra neighborhood. The whole neighborhood is already destroyed. More than 17 towers are down. Here, as you can see, the firefighters trying their best to help. The people are still under the rubble. A lot of the people.
Join Hamza on his exclusive South African tour as he shares his personal experiences, never before seen footage, and powerful insights on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This is more than just a talk. It's an invitation to witness Gaza through the lens of Hamza Sha'alan. Don't miss this opportunity to meet the photojournalist who brought Gaza's pain and perseverance to the world in its darkest moments. Follow Salam Media on social media pages for more on this tour and be part of the conversation.